Hey there, welcome to XR Industry Leaders with ArborXR. My name is Brad Scoggin, and I am the CEO and one of three co-founders of ArborXR. And we've had the opportunity of working with thousands of companies since 2016. And we've learned a ton about what it takes for XR to be successful in your organization.
And I'm Will Stackable, co-founder and CMO. This podcast is all about interviewing the leaders who are on the ground making XR happen today. True pioneers in the space, from Amazon, Walmart, and UPS to Coke, Pfizer, and beyond, to uncover the pitfalls, lessons learned, and secrets that you can use to help grow XR in your organization.
Well, today we get to sit down with Devin Marble. Devin is the head of marketing for VRpatients. We're excited to have you on the show today, Devin.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Well, as you know, we always love to get a little bit of backstory on our guests. So we know that you have had a fairly extensive career in entertainment, production, even maybe some TV hosting. So I'd love to hear maybe some of your favorite projects and how you made the jump from doing that into immersive technology.
Oh, thank you. And thank you guys for having me here. I'm really honored to be on this podcast. I'm a fan. I listen. So I'm geeking out a little bit.
Amazing.
I started out I spent 10 years in Hollywood. And just to answer your question really quick, I think my favorite show to work on was I was the story producer for all the even episodes of Project Runway.
Cool.
Season 8.
Nice.
With Tim Gunn and Heidi Klum. That was a good one. You know, my past, I started out, I wanted to be a veterinarian when I was a kid, but I was told that I just didn't get good enough grades, and so I couldn't do it. And I just didn't chase that down, didn't apply myself to it. Then I ended up getting into drama class. I asked my buddies, like, what should I do? I can't be a vet. And they're like, come into drama. And I'm so shy by nature that drama was really hard for me. Anyways, I took to it. I loved it and decided that's what I'm going to be when I grow up. I'm going to do something in entertainment. That pushed me out there for 10 years, and I learned that I wasn't helping anybody but myself. And I also learned that I chose a way harder career than becoming a vet or any kind of medical person, right? Because look, it's hard to become a doctor or a vet for sure. But once you get your degree, you get to be that thing. And it doesn't matter how many degrees you have. You don't get to be famous. You also have to get struck by lightning. And so when I had that aha moment, I got reconnected with my high school sweetheart. We got married. I moved us back to our hometown to get our feet under us. And I headed headfirst into medical. And that's when I became a paramedic. I became a clinical genetic researcher with the University of Arizona. I was teaching at the community college. I built their VR studio for them. I was pre-med. It was a 5-year journey to be pre-med. And in 2020, I canceled my med school application to lean into digital because of this thing called VR that was happening that I was good at. And all of the media, content creation, and technicality of using video, I had learned. I was practiced at it. The medical stuff was tough. So I was able to kind of combine these two worlds. And then when the pandemic hit, it was like a rocket ship. And I'm very fortunate to be working on the team at VRpatients, kind of building something for public health and building something for the future of healthcare that includes immersive solutions at scale. That's kind of how I got there. I hope that was a straight line.
Yeah, that's a great story. I love that. I love the, we were talking in the pre-interview. If you would have told me you were shy ever, I don't think anyone would have guessed that. But I love how you kind of brought it all together. And obviously for all of us, I mean, COVID was such an accelerant for XR and VR. So tell us, you started out at Pima College as a customer of VRpatients, and
That's
then you
correct.
made the transition to work with VRpatients. Maybe tell us about that journey a little bit.
You know, VRpatients is the type of team that wants to work with people who want to get it done. And what ended up happening was I was providing solutions to them because I loved the product and I was able to implement it at the college. And I just started working with them as often as I could. And they slowly started to let me join the team. So I had been working with VRpatients for over like a year and a half before I joined the team as a full-time employee. And, and now I'm going to move out to headquarters. Even though we're digital and remote, there's something about being able to shake hands with your team and get to the chalkboard or whiteboard and really get stuff done. And, we're moving quick, so I'm very excited to push that forward with them.
So before we go any further, I want to explain to us what is VRpatients. Brad and I actually got a chance to download a module. You got to set up in the clinic as a I don't know what you call it, I guess, to do the training ourselves. But to give us a little bit, I want to share my feedback, some of my takeaways from the experience, maybe, if that's okay. But I want to hear, how would you describe VRpatients?
VRpatients is an immersive clinical competency training platform. So we help either the professional or the initial paramedic, nurse, EMT. It can go up to critical care and even help train residents, physicians on the decision-making process. So we don't dabble in pick up this three-dimensional model that looks like an IV and try to get it up to the skin and put it in with Oculus controllers or zero haptics and hand tracking. We don't mess with that. So when you choose to do a skills intervention like IV, it appears on the avatar. And it is 100% up to you to figure out, why did you put that IV there? What kind of IV was it? What are you putting in it? How much? When? What's wrong with the patient? Have you done a dialogue with them? Are you making competent decisions as a clinician? And that is what we test on in an objective grading rubric, which means there's no subjectivity to it. So, Will, for example, if you're in the system and you're clicking away and you're looking at the patient avatar, you're trying your treatments, and you make a mistake, and I'm your proctor, and I'm like, you know what? You did a pretty good job. I know you meant to do this when you did that, and the patient's okay, so we're going to give you the points and move you forward. That doesn't happen in VRpatients. And that's intentional, because we want our clinicians, our instructors, our educators to be able to deploy at scale and let their students asynchronously practice in a safe, comfortable environment and iterate and trust that the simulation is going to keep them true. They have to click through it. They have to get through it and make the decisions. And then they get the feedback. So when they come in for actual skills time debriefing, I mean, you can do VRpatients live on campus, absolutely, and have a whole classroom. But if you do deploy at scale and the students come in, think about the questions that those students are going to ask. Today in clinical simulation, you go to class every day, and when there's a sim day, you prep for it, and then you run sims. But what if those students had been practicing in a non-destructive environment all semester, all year? They've done 300 patients. What kind of questions is that student going to ask when they arrive at sim day with the proctor? I'm hoping they're going to be way more thoughtful, way less about the actual sim and more about the disease.
Beautiful. I love it. I have to share my experience as a total ignorant, non-medical. My wife is a nurse. That's the closest I get. When she starts telling me stories about work, if it involves blood, I just have to leave. I can't even hear it. So that's my background. But so for me, I get into the headset. We go into an experience, and there's basically a patient sitting in a bed or laying in a bed in front of me who looks like she's in pretty bad shape, pretty beat up. And you said you prepared it specially. There's a bit of a shock factor. I think she was missing an arm or a hand.
I didn't know you were squeamish with blood.
Oh yeah, it was great. But it was interesting because on the right you have basically a panel of options, and it's pretty overwhelming as a non-medical student. You have no idea. So you have an assessment panel, you have a dialogue panel where you can have conversations. There's all different types of instruments. I realized at one point that I had a monitor that could show everything from an EKG, I think, to a heart rate monitor, blood pressure, blood oxygen. Yep. And you go through basically a diagnostic. I mean, you're having to make decisions about, should I run labs here? Should I put a cuff on to check blood pressure? Should we do an IV? If so, what's the size of IV? And what's the type of, should I put in a saline solution? And I think one of my takeaways was, man, it just gave me appreciation for the complexity of the job of any doctor or nurse, because you have a patient who seems like they're in trouble, they're breathing heavily, complaining of chest pain. And as a doctor, you have so many potential tools and roads you could go down. And so I thought it was such a interesting, from just as a layperson, it was fascinating and a bit overwhelming. And I don't think I killed her, but I was trying all the different things. I think I stuck an IV in at one point, and then no, I did it was a nose cannula with the oxygen, and she said. As soon as I put it on, she said the pressure makes me feel like my eyes are gonna blow out, and so I turned down the oxygen pressure. And
nice.
So, anyways, it was great. It was a great experience. I'd love So this is the first I've heard too that you guys are really focusing on this specific use case, which is helping med students train ahead of. So when you describe a little bit the use case where, as a student, what's a typical preparation you'd have before you go in and get hands-on experience? Are you usually reading in a textbook and that's the alternative?
Yes. Yes, it is. You would be surprised at how little patient contact you get at the beginning of your education, like the first half of your education, especially for doctors. Oh my goodness. But that's why physicians have, 2 or 3 years of residency. But that's really trial by fire. You come out of years of theory and memorizing and just thousands of pages, into real people. It is nerve-wracking. Nurses, if you're going to get a bachelor's of science in nursing, it's a 4-year program. Simulation is not really a part of that first year. It could be a part of the second year, but it's really, really entry-level stuff.
Well,
They don't really engage with the patient care side of things until they start to get there at the book. And part of that reason is to not overwhelm the students, right? You have plenty to learn. So we'll get to patients when we get to patients. And there is a roadmap that they currently have in nursing curriculums. What's so exciting about immersive solutions is that it really allows you to sprinkle in clinical education, and it's just non-destructive. Like you can assign a grade to it, but you don't have to. And you can let the students fail. You can, for the first time ever, be in, year 1 cardiology chapter, learning about conduction and like plus and minus. And, so it's an electrical conduction. It goes from here to there. Wow, that's why the heart squeezes. And then that night, put on your VR headset and go, so this is a heart attack patient? I have no idea what to do here. And it talks to you and you go, holy cow, this is what I'm in for. This is what I'm going to do. I'm excited. And I think that is just super exciting. There is an educational gap there, which is for the educator. It's part of the challenges of VRpatients and any number of us out there creating these immersive solutions. We really have to educate the customer on how to sprinkle this throughout your curriculum because it's so new. You can't sprinkle Laerdal mannequins throughout a student's curriculum because it requires 2 instructors to set it up and get everything ready. You got to fill it with fluid. It's got like an iPad connected to it. You have to be there. It costs $100,000 so the student doesn't get to play with it by themselves. And so to be able to have an immersive solution that's a 10th that cost and infinitely scalable is real power for the educator. And I love what you said just now. It like warmed my heart that you said as a layperson, you had an appreciation for the medical provider. I never even thought about that. And I think that is an incredible, use case.
Yeah, I thought it was a very cool. You're in the waiting room and then you're in the operating room. It felt very real. Yeah, the patient's room and there's so many. I was doing it. Several of my family members are in the medical field, so I was doing it around them. We're visiting some family and. They overhear me saying it and they're like, how do you know that it was a fun experience? But I'm curious. I think one thing we've seen over the years as we've worked with different groups doing VR education, what you just said is a challenge, right? It's like, there's no question. We can talk about this more a little bit. I don't think there's any question before I tried VRpatients, but even, I'm not being a medical person. Okay, the benefit, it seems to be very, very clear, but it does, the challenge of how do you fit this in? How do you guys address that with the different group? I'm sure they look at it and that this is amazing. Now, how do we make it work in a way? Yeah, like what's your process there?
So our process is, I like to think of VRpatients as built by nurses and EMS for nurses and EMS because we have a ton of SME, subject matter experts on our team. So we've got nurses constructing these template cases because the system comes with a library of patients ready to go that are based on all the standards and accrediting guidelines and vetted by an actual nurse or by an actual paramedic. And so we really are shoulder to shoulder with the front line as we create this solution to make sure that it's useful for them.
Yeah.
But how do we bridge that gap of education? Really what we have to do is hold their hand and show them. For example, we create custom curriculums for the onboarding customer at the point of demo. So we're demoing with a customer, we're showing them the solution, and then we go, and here, we downloaded your nursing curriculum, and we're going to show you, look at, this is how you could use VRpatients in nursing 3345, whatever the class code is. And for nursing 110, this is how you could do it. And we take their course descriptions and provide them back this handheld, like, it's going to be okay. We're going to help you win and succeed before you even become a customer. So you can have an understanding of how this industry can so positively impact you. It's just a much better hammer to build a much bigger house.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what? The hand holding, I got to sit on that for a second, because I think,
Sure.
goodness, we were just on earlier with one of our partners doing some sales enablement, and it's a bigger organization. And I heard our sales team talk to them just about needing hand holding, right? And it feels like with where XR is at, with where VR is at, those of us who are in this early stage, we have to, even on our team sometimes, right? Like, we're ready to scale. Let's think about but you know what? In so many ways, we're still in the hand holding phase.
Yeah.
And for this thing to really take off, and I think what's frustrating is, like, again, you get in this content, anybody who gets into your content, this is amazing. Right? You put on a VR headset. This is amazing. And there's still this gap between, I mean, you talked about the gap in curriculum versus, implementing a new tool, but there's this gap in usability almost. And I think for anybody listening to this, who's thinking about how to scale XR in their organization, and again, we all love to say scale. So it feels like once we can say scale, we've done something. But the reality is, the way we scale is by doing the hard things early, sleeping on couches, hand holding.
Right.
So I think that's really just the key. It's great to hear you say that. And it's even a good reminder for us, I think, Will, just for all of us in the space. Like, the hand holding early on is what creates the foundation for this thing to grow, and for people to really get to experience the impact of it.
Well, and part of VRpatients is community built. So there's a vested interest in us hand holding with the customer, because we don't just want them to onboard and then see you later. We want them to have pride in what they're creating and creating their own patient library. And so that means we want you to be good at our platform, not just have access to it. And that requires us to be there for you. And we are.
You talked about community driven. I think that's really important. Could you just share a little bit about the scale and scope of your current customer user base? Just so we can all understand, what are we talking about?
So VRpatients is used by thousands of clients. Those clients are organizations, individuals, clinical educators, simulation specialists, professional paramedics. Some of them are even resident physicians, and really, there's quite a few of them. But without VRpatients' assistance, other than helping them fix a few things, they are building their own patients. And that community-built patient library is approaching 2,000 right now. Just think about that for a second. If we have 350, for example, registered educators, instructors, simulation technologists, and between them, they're building thousands of patients, and they're all accredited based on their local standards and guidelines. They're the subject matter expert. They're professionals. Brad, your wife, both of your guys' wives are in medical. I'm not going to presume to know more than them on the patients that they treat. And if they're going to teach someone else on their wisdom, on their experience, well, they should be able to use a tool that can bend to the way that they want to teach, to their curriculum. And that's really exciting to me, that kind of scale. And they all own their library. It's all theirs.
And that's something, I didn't get into. I didn't see the back end of being able to build out these experiences.
Yeah.
But as I was going through it, I was imagining, wow, the flexibility here to really design all different challenges in a variety of scenarios. If you look at the website, You have all these different, you can put them in a clinic setting, but you can also put them in their house, or for a paramedic, you show up and they're on a city street. I think that flexibility is really unique. You talked about, you have thousands of devices, thousands of these experiences that have been created. Zoom into like just one moment, or have there been any aha moments where you've worked with an educator and they've kind of lit up and you've seen, oh, they're getting the power of this thing?
Yes, we have a couple of stories. All right, I'll tell you one story. So we're out at a conference, and I think this was about a year ago, and one of our customers came to the conference, and they had been a customer for, I think, almost 2 years, and they came to our booth raving about the product, and we're asking them, tell us what it's like. What do you like? What don't you like? Let's really pick, let's poke at this a little bit. And everything this gentleman was describing was WebGL. He likes how the mouse turns into a stethoscope and how real the lung sounds sound and how he can do the pupils with his mouse. And we're like, do you use it in virtual reality? And he said, no, that's new technology. I don't know. And it's that same hurdle, that hardware divide that we are all dealing with in this industry, which I'm really excited for Apple, right? Because they're helping break that down now with their new device. But anyways, so he's there at the booth, and we're like, well, we have a VR headset right here. Would you like to try it? And so he tries it out. His mind exploded right there. He leaves our booth, goes back to his hotel. He orders a Meta headset, has it overnighted to his hotel, brings it to our booth the next day.
Amazing.
And we help him set it up. And he, of course, went back to his institution, and now they're on VR. And the aha moment for him, we have a photo of him on his hands and knees at our booth. And he's underneath the patient who's sitting on the cot. And he's looking under the feet to try to assess the skin of the blue toes from like deoxygenation and stuff, because he couldn't see that angle on the WebGL. And he was just so fascinated that, wait a minute, so I can walk around this patient, I can look at any angle, there's something there? We're like, yes, there's something there. We call our platform WYSIWYG, which is what you see is what you get. And some of the features we had to go extreme with. So, for example, if your patient appears to have some yellow skin, that's jaundice. That's a liver problem. That is something you need to note. It's not just the game. That's a poor artwork in the game, right? What you see is what you get.
I love that. Tell us about, a lot of times we talk about, proof of concept and moving towards scale. So that was a great story. You're typically selling to an institution or to individuals, and like, what is that process like selling into, and maybe even, I guess there's probably some evangelism to leadership within that org, and what role do you all play in that, and how does that kind of play out?
Yeah, so we do sell at the enterprise level. And for individuals, it's free. They just go on to, like, for example, if they have a MetaQuest headset, they can just go to the Meta store, type in VRpatients, and download it, and they can play with 3 patients. So today, we are enterprise level, which means it's a university, a community college, a ambulance company, a firehouse, a hospital. But because we can scale, it's also a state. Like, we recently onboarded the entire state of Maine, which the product is going to be used to train all of their EMS, right? And that's really exciting. And so,
Very exciting.
But these are enterprise level, right? Customers. In the future, we're really looking forward to, I think I might drop something here on the pod. I think I might give you a hot take.
Do it.
We're really excited about this idea of a marketplace that's community built. So I want you to imagine just this use case for a moment. COVID hits Seattle really hard. The disease is coming. And all those physicians and educators and nurse educators out there are like, holy cow, this is novel. This is a problem. And one of them builds that patient and then deploys it to everybody else. And the rest of the country gets to practice on a new disease coming. How do I treat this? What do I treat this with? Why? What's this happening? And that is what we're excited about. And that's just like a use case, but the idea is that the subject matter expert in Arkansas can be building something, offer it into the marketplace. We then provide them a token so they can download a different one. and someone else goes, I want that Arkansas case. It's really good. I like it. I'm going to download that. And so we're really excited about that future.
Well, no, to me, even, the COVID example is very powerful, but just the basic, you said you got 2,000 different, there's endless scenarios, right? And so the fact that those scenarios would be built by experts in the community that others could pull from, and again, having been in there, I can tell, it can become pretty complex if need be, right? So being able to, you could imagine that a teacher saying, hey, this week we're going to work on this case. I'm going to build this in advance. You work on it.
Correct.
It's really, and there is something about one thing we talk about, and I haven't talked about it in a while, but we see it across the board, right? So we have a lot of education customers. We have a lot of enterprise customers, and, we look at it as just learning, but the learning revolution is what I call it, that VR is enabling. It's that people are learning faster. People are retaining more information. You need less, we interviewed UPS. You don't need a truck or a trainer in that scenario.
I listened to
right?
that episode. Yeah.
So maybe in this scenario, you don't need a cadaver or whatever, or a trainer to practice, and you can practice 100 times or 1,000 times.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe talk a little bit about, the state of Maine is really cool, and thinking about what's fun too in all these cases. It's like, you're just getting started, right? That's one state.
Yeah.
That's the EMS in that state. I'm sure you're getting traction with different universities.
Yes.
And how much potential that is to grow. But when you think about deploying to a state or to an entire university or a university system, like, what are some of the unique challenges maybe for you guys when you do try to go to scale?
With the idea that you're hand-holding, that you described this early
the balance
role in, how do you do the hand-holding but also the scale side of things?
So one of the challenges that it's hardware really is the biggest challenge. People just can't get over this idea that it's a completely new device and it doesn't really fall into the category of a computer or an iPad. And it's this totally new device. And it's like, so does it sit plugged in, and how do I clean it, and how many do I need, and which one do I get? And so what we have decided to do is we pick one that we have validated, and we've selected the MetaQuest 2 headset because of its affordability, its scalability, its use case. It has its own challenges, and many of those challenges ArborXR helps us overcome, which we really appreciate. Facebook is the challenge. And so what we do is we're offering here's another hot take.
Yeah, I love it.
We're offering a new solution that's coming in the future. This idea that it's this one-stop shop that you can order from VRpatients, and if you want to make an order, and 3 to 4 weeks later a box is going to arrive at your door with all the headsets. They work. They're connected to your Wi-Fi automatically. Everything's loaded onto it. Your logins are in. You just basically turn it on. We will do that for you. And so that is a new offering coming in the future as well. And this is
beautiful.
This idea of hand-holding, right? In order for us to get there with the customer, we're going to take a little step ahead of them, create something, and then hand it back and say, we know this is a challenge. That's why we've created this for you. Because we don't we're not upselling on the Meta headset. It's just the MSRP. You're going to buy it anyways. So if you want our recommendation, we're happy to provide it. And if you want us to just pull the trigger for you on that recommendation because you're going to make that purchase anyways, we're happy to do that for you.
Well, you're so confident in the value. Right? I think all of us who have been in XR long enough are like, you just have to try it. Like, once you try it, it's going to expand in your whole org. And so I think many of us are willing to take that extra hand-holding step in the beginning because we know the value. It's super clear.
Yep, absolutely.
As we wrap, I want to ask you a question about your personal why. I know VRpatients' tagline is, I think, something like real life training without real life consequences.
Yeah.
Which reminds me of Dr. Balinson from Stanford.
That should just be VR's tagline. It's amazing.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah,
Dr. Balinson from Stanford says that VR is great for anything that's difficult, dangerous, or expensive to simulate in real life. I almost like your tagline better than that, real life training without real life consequences. And you can start there, but I'd like to hear, what's your personal why for getting into VR? You strike me as a true believer, and I'm always curious, like what drives you when you wake up? What gets you excited to go to work?
Man, that's a deep question. It stems from my wife getting into medicine. I learned early that I didn't want to run into a burning building because it's on fire. That's not me. But I fell in love with the medicine. I started out as an EMT on an ambulance. We delivered our first patient to the emergency department, and he was sick. And I asked my partner, what's going to happen to that guy? He's like, I don't know. That's not our job. And I was like, wait a minute. But is he going to be okay? He goes, that I don't know. He said, but I do know that the paramedics in that emergency department know more than the paramedics on our box, which is a little bit of an exaggeration. I don't want to knock on ambulance medics. They're amazing. My brother-in-law's an ambulance medic. But that really made me want to get into that emergency department because I wanted to help heal that person. And when I got connected with VR, man, it was an aha moment for me. I was standing in front of someone that looked real in an environment that felt real. It sounded real. And there were clues, right? I was able to look around and go, hey, your clothes are disheveled and dirty. You don't have any shoes. And you're next to a trash can. Are you sick? Are you feeling okay? And how valuable is that for the nurse who typically doesn't get to see that? In nursing education, we call that social determinants of health. All the things in your social life that determine your health, your financial status, who the people you hang out with, what you eat, where you live, like all the things, the demographics of your area, they impact your health. So how does a nurse include those in their healthcare and their training at the bedside? Well, they have to take a history. They have to ask questions. But can they visualize those answers and those responses? So I think my why is this idea of I do miss patient care and treating people. But I feel like I can impact way more people positively through immersive, scalable solutions. And if people like that, who feel that strongly about it, who are tied to it, who were once in healthcare, who are in healthcare, are trying to create a healthcare solution, that to me sounds like a recipe for a real problem solved by the community, for the community. So maybe that's what drives me.
I love it.
I love that. That's so good. And I mean, for us, and I think for any of us who are in XR, AR, VR, there's so much promise and potential in the technology, and we all see it, especially those who are in it. But it's been a slog. We've been in this since 2016, which feels like a lifetime. Just a lifetime. And so I think it's so important that we do have, conviction about the technology, and we do have a strong why. And for us, very similar to yours, just kind of our side of the equation and seeing, wow, we get to work with dozens or hundreds of VRpatients in different industries. We get to work with Axon, who has created police de-escalation training, helping prepare police officers for dangerous situations, saving life. There's so many examples out there, and just that really resonates. I think for us, removing the friction to see this technology go to scale quickly and easily, we think a lot about that initial, the hand-holding part, right? That initial, you have one shot at a first impression. Yeah. And leadership they're naturally resistant to new technology or change, no matter how great it is, right? And so whatever we can do to come in and make that initial experience. So I love that. We'll end with a light wrap here.
Sure.
The Apple headset was just announced.
Apple Vision Pro.
And so
making
it
waves.
wouldn't be right if we didn't talk about it. So give us your thoughts. How does it impact VR? How does it impact healthcare?
I think it's going to be super impactful. I cannot wait for the face pewter to arrive.
Oh, coined it here.
I'm super jazzed about it. Not because I think that clinical educators are going to be using it. No. So it's because today you do not see XR products in the wild. I mean, the HoloLens, 8 years, right? You've never seen one.
That's a great point.
Right? You don't see them at a coffee shop. Oculus, 11 years ago with the Rift, and then bought by Meta, and then billions poured into it to make the most affordable solution. Never seen one in the wild, right? It's like some rich kid's living room. He's playing games, but you don't see him at a coffee shop. But what Apple's done, they flipped it, right? They took a VR headset and made it AR first, always on camera. You know how huge that is?
Yeah.
For two reasons. One, we know that the lens technology is coming in the next 3 or 4 years, and people are going to be prepared to see their applications in their living space on something more that looks like glasses. But two, why in the world would I take my MetaQuest headset to a coffee shop to work on anything, right? If I can't see, someone's going to take my bag. Right? No joke. Like, would you go into a coffee shop and blindfold yourself and drink some coffee? No, not in a million years. And so the Vision Pro, you're going to start to see it in the wild. Not only is it a status symbol, but the computing power is crazy. And the way that it integrates with your laptop for productivity alone, and because you can see people and see things, and this just provides a level of safety, it provides a level of comfort, and because it's Apple, it also has a status symbol. When you start to see those in the wild, that is going to make it easier for your customers, ArborXR's customers, to pitch up the chain to leadership that this is something that we should invest in, because today they pitch something that they have never held, have never seen up the chain. And they go, so you're telling me that we need this, but I've never seen one, and why do we need this? Make the use case. Which is why I always recommend to people who are trying to sell up the chain at their institution or organization, you never sell the Zoom demo to leadership. Get the Zoom demo done, and then you get that software provider to send you a headset, or if you have one, get a free demo, download it on the headset, and you get leadership immersed with their first impression.
It's great,
and that's the key.
That is great advice. I love that take. And yeah, I mean, getting someone in the headset, we've said that for 6 or 7 years, right? That's the only way to sell VR is to get in VR. And
you see it with Apple. Even Apple has a marketing. I mean, they say VR has a marketing problem in that it's not cool but Apple's probably come the closest to solving that. And I love your point, which I haven't actually heard. That's a great take, that you are going to start seeing them at coffee shops. And it's a combination of, it's an Apple headset. People want to, plus it has productivity software that actually works with your MacBook. But the dial is huge. And I haven't heard people talk about that enough because people make fun of it. But you're so right. If I'm in a coffee shop, I want to be able to see around me. I want to see my peripheral. I want to be able to see my hands to grab the coffee cup. The Quest has you can double tap and go through the pass-through, but you feel like you're in X-ray vision, like Superman or something. It's not a comfortable experience. So that's a really interesting. I can't wait till we start seeing them at coffee shops. The first one, I'm gonna take a photo, and it's gonna be a moment. It's a milestone.
I'm seriously considering.
It's a huge milestone.
I'm seriously considering replacing my desktop setup.
Really?
Right now, I've got 3 monitors in front of me, right? And they're big. They occupy all this desktop space. And I have the Immersive Medical Pod to edit by Friday because we're going to launch it, right? So I'm also traveling for a conference this week. So you know what I have to do is I have to get rough cut done on this desktop computer and then put that onto my laptop so I can polish during the week because I'm not going to have access to this hard drive, to all of that stuff. But if I had my MacBook with my face pewter, then I could be I could be on the airplane with 3 monitors and everything computing right there. And so when I'm at work at home, I can have different things on my desk. I can have more space for other things. And so that's just that's something that's very interesting.
Yes.
I want to speak to something that you said, Brad, about you've been in this for 2016, and it just feels like forever, and it just feels like so much hand holding. I want to encourage y'all to stick this out because, and I know that you guys are going to, but the WHO has predicted a shortfall of 15 million healthcare workers by 2030. That's 7 years away.
Wow.
Which means that starting today, if we don't start training with clinical competency, 2 million more nurses per year for the next 7 years, that's just to come out even, to meet the need. And institutions are being charged for clinical time now. You want to go into the hospital? You got to charge your students to get in there now. Wow. And so there are 32 states that signed into law being able to replace 1/3 of your clinical time with an immersive solution.
Really?
So it's coming.
Wow.
And these people are going to need to know how to handle more than 10 headsets.
No, I totally agree. It does feel like across multiple sectors, we're finally hitting the critical mass. But We just needed to start going downhill, right? Like, okay.
You push the snowball over the hill. There is a promised land. It's coming.
Right. Well, Devin, this has been awesome. Awesome. Where can people find you or your new podcast, VRpatients? Like, where do you want to be found?
Okay, sure. So I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter and stuff like that at Devin Marble, and I'm just like a marble countertop in your kitchen. But you can go to VRpatients.com if you want to learn more about VRpatients, or if you just want free educational authoritative content in this space, kind of helping bridge this divide of healthcare and immersive. It's the Immersive Medical Podcast or the Immersive Medical YouTube channel. You just type in Immersive Medical wherever you get your pod, or check it out on YouTube.
Awesome. Love it. And I would actually recommend, we all talked about the best way to sell VR is to get someone in VR. I think the VRpatients content is great for anybody just to get in and see what's possible. And it's free,
cool.
Right? For an individual. So I recommend that to anybody.
We'll make sure we add links to all that.
Yeah, we will for sure.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time, Devin. You're a busy man. You're traveling and editing and everything else. So great sitting down with you today. And we look forward to chatting again soon.
Greatly appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank you
Devin.
for having me.
Talk soon.
Man, that was a great interview. That was a lot of fun. I think we should consider asking Devin to guest host our pod occasionally. He did a great job.
He should just take over. He can run it.
Yeah. I having been in the content and now hearing him kind of explain it, to me, what I guess what really strikes me is they've taken a very complex process, learning how to be a nurse or a physician, and I guess different procedures within that process. And they've simplified it down to enable instructors or students to really dial in on one use case and then be able to run through that over and over again. I think that's very powerful.
Yeah, I didn't share this on the pod, and I wish we'd gotten into it more. But after the fact, after I went through and almost killed this patient multiple times, he sent me an email that had a video where he was screen recording, and they have a back-end dashboard where an instructor or proctor is able to go and see all the actions you've taken within the timeline, and you could walk through after the fact with a student and kind of explain, okay, at this point the patient presented with this symptom, you ran this test, this came back, and then you did this, and you diverted off of the proper path, and that's why you had a negative outcome. So for me, I thought it was so interesting. Obviously, I can't, I couldn't even begin to understand what I did wrong, but I can see, like you said, the variety of use cases that might come your way, the number of different types of patients that could present, and being able to, as a student, make these complex decisions and then get feedback from an actual instructor. It's pretty cool.
It is very cool. And I definitely killed my patient, no doubt. I think it kept me from killing the patient by not allowing certain actions. But it was a fun experience and obviously a very, very powerful teaching tool. Well, as always, we very much appreciate you taking time to check out this pod. Make sure you like and subscribe wherever you consume your podcasts, and we will catch you next time.
Thanks.